going live. Welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds. I am Nerder Doug, and with me in the opposite box tonight is this nerd.
Nerdarchist Ted, how are you doing this fine and lovely evening, sir?
Pretty great. It's a beautiful day outside. It's been a great weekend, and here we are to talk about the lovely, lighthearted topic of Beyond Death tonight in our live chat.
Indeed. There is so many things that people feel that death is the end, whether it be of a character, whether it be of a campaign. There are so many things that you can still kind of reach back and look at those things and find all of the fun little tidbits, fun ways to continue on. And I came with a whole bunch of mental notes. I
Yeah, I
know
was going to say, this was a topic that you had brought up during our planning meeting, so I figured like you had, some ideas you seemed enthusiastic about.
So first off, you've got Beyond Death. So the death of a character. In a game, a character dies and it can be sad. But that character story doesn't necessarily have to end. When your Grung died in, the Esper the Bard's game, you're like, oh, well, my next character wants to come back and kind of, you know, be an homage. Let me carry his story on and let things go on. And you came in knowing Grung because of that. When a character dies, that can affect the overall story of, well, what does everyone feel? What are all the player characters? How do they react? How does that inform what decisions they're going to do next? Are they, bothered? Are they in depression? Are you in rage? Or is it spurring you on to greater things? Are you going to do a quest to be like, I must bring this character back? And you can do things just because you bring in a new character. It might be a spotlight. Is there a session or two while you're going to get, this, the character you really want to play resurrected. You can do that. When the story is over for the campaign, all those things that have happened, if you're going to play in that same world, those are all things that you've got the capacity to say, hey, you know what? These stories have happened. They have now entered the lore for your world. This is just like the small tidbits that you can be like, all right, I'm gonna sew this in. What if you play a game 100 years from now, and the characters find a book that details or summarizes the happenings of your previous player characters, and then you have fun with it. Get some details wrong, like
Yeah.
oh, the great defeat of the Hydra that had 7 heads. Dude, that thing had 9 heads by the time we were done. What the hell? So you have those things that get to, reminisce and highlight those moments. Maybe you get a character's name wrong, who the player is going to have fun with that and be okay with it. As opposed to Sir Gertrude or what have you, it's Sir Gertrod. Oh my God, they got his name wrong. That's hilarious. So you can do these kinds of things, but that's only one, one avenue. I've got another one, but I'll let you, chime in way on,
Well, I think one of the original, or one of the things that brought it up for you was that it's like a chapter heading in the Theros book. So that kind of tied in with recently I had rewatched the Lord of the Rings movies, the best fantasy movies ever, by the way. But there's something about that in there. It reminded me of when Gandalf and Pippin are talking, and Pippin's lamenting that everything's ending and horribly. They're at the Minas Tirith and stuff, and Gandalf says, "Oh, the journey doesn't end there. It's just another path that they take," and about the world rolling back and turning to silver glass and all that kind of stuff. So that made me think, tied in with that Theros stuff, that like in these fantasy worlds, death isn't even the end of a character. I mean, they go somewhere, right? Like in earlier editions, I mean, it was like very clear, based on like your alignment and stuff. It's like, well, if you're chaotic good, then you go to like the happy hunting grounds or whatever. and you could go there and retrieve your, and see, have adventures there. And in that Theros book, the underworld is a big part of the mythology of it. So because it's like sort of inspired by our own Greek mythology, and it has like little ideas for adventure hooks, like not for going to get the person, but like what happens to you after death. Like maybe you have some toil that you have to do, and you can like win your freedom, or it's like there's all sorts of things like raise a revolt against the the underworld jailers and free a bunch of souls and stuff like that. So I mean, there's no end to how much we can go on beyond death. So I like your approach on it being more sort of like a broader scope like that too, where it's just like, well, it's more philosophical. It's like, yeah, everything dies, but it's like their stories don't end. And I particularly totally agree with you on like, when a character dies, I mean, it stinks, right? Nobody likes when their character dies, but it never, even if it's not like, to your point, like in a dramatic way, it still means something. Like that Grim character wasn't like a heroic death where he like threw himself in front of danger. He just died in a dangerous thing. I mean, it's adventuring is not easy, but yeah, like the story continues on. I like that approach to it.
Tying into Theros, as well as going back to a third edition product, it was probably one of the most fun books that I had picked up, and that was called Ghostwalk.
Oh yeah, that was very cool. Yes, I'm familiar with that.
I loved that book, and I ran a Ghostwalk campaign.
Did you?
I did. I set it up wrong. Years and years ago, obviously, because we're talking about third edition. But I ran a game, and the scope of the game was I was going to let the players establish their player characters, and we ran a number of sessions, and all of it was to get to point A, and point A was their character's death, and it really I was too eager about it. I had set up this battle against insurmountable odds, and it was clear. I'm gaming with a whole bunch of people who are aware of what books are out there and what have you. But like when this guy goes and I kill that player, and this guy goes and I kill that player, that's not Ted's typical style.
Were they aware that was the setup or no?
No.
Oh, okay.
So
I'm seeing where this is going now.
I was hiding Ghostwalk. I wasn't letting them know that I wanted to do this type of campaign, and it was all just like, all right, here's this thing happening, and like I wasn't as I didn't tone myself down enough. I didn't drag it out. But it's like, all right, boom, this player gets dropped. Boom, that player gets dropped. But I'm dropping more dice than these guys are able to handle. Dave's a smart guy. He's aware of what products are out there. Mm-hmm. Maybe one of them, might have been, biting their fingernails or what have you, but, that's not a brutal DM. So I didn't set the scene as proper as I should have. Mm-hmm. So once the last character died, and I pushed the notes aside, and it's like, okay, you wake up here. It's like, what? Dave saw it coming, but, it's like the story goes on. And they basically played as spirits in Ghostwalk until they could come back to life to go fight that battle again. And that was the idea. The villains that I had set up that killed them, they were going to come back to that moment to defeat them, and the villains were going to be like super shocked that, wait a second, you're not supposed to be able to beat us. What happened? Mm-hmm. And as with many of our campaigns, things kind of floundered and another DM steps in and what have you. Or at least our old games. Nowadays we finish stories and wrap things up nice and neat. Much more fun. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was definitely a fun time. I loved Ghostwalk. I need to get that book back out of the attic. Maybe have some fun with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I do have some experience with it, and I suppose it ties to our traditional question of the week from our Patreon supporter Zip Warlock, who asks this week on the subject of Beyond Death. They have either of us ever had a character who came back as a sentient undead and continued playing, like a vampire or white or specter or something like that? If so, how'd it go? And speaking of Ghostwhack, I haven't had those exact circumstances, but I remembered while you were talking about it that we did plan a campaign that my friend was going to run, and I remember this in particular because he's like one of those over planner ones. So it was like, oh my god, he's actually going to run one, because it's like, they're ever planning and they're never ready. But this was back in those 3.5 days when it's just like making a character meant like, okay, which 40 source books am I going to use for this character? And I thought it would be fun to play a Ghostwalk character for it, even though it wasn't one of those, it wasn't set there, right? And as I recall, a lot of the ghost character features and abilities dealt with dealing with other ghosts and things there. So, in essence, like in this setting where it wasn't that, I couldn't do anything except I could possess people, I remember. And I was like, well, that's kind of cool. So I could like hover around and they could, I could talk to the other characters and stuff, but I couldn't like affect the real world unless I possessed something. Like, so I just put all his like beats and everything towards making that better, because I was like, well, that's all I can do here, because like all the other ghost paths of character development didn't really do anything in the real world. So, but it was pretty fun, and I think we started playing like one session, and it was just like the typical, it really didn't get into the meat of storytelling. It was just like, the goblins or whatever was causing trouble, sort of thing. So, but I was disappointed because I was like, I really want to explore that idea where it's like, I'm here, they can see me and talk to me, but I can't interact with the world or be interacted with unless I possess something else. So that was kind
of the closest thing I've had to that was a one shot on Mage Domain where we explored Wildmount.
Oh yeah.
And I got to play a Hollow one.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's right. Yeah, I totally forgot about that. Right. Are those the people that have just they've died and come back to life under like mysterious circumstances, basically?
Yeah. You are kind of undead. You kind of register the things that detected and what have you.
Yeah.
You don't get a whole lot of things. It's considered a supernatural gift because it gets taxed on top of your race, so it's extra. So
that's interesting. Is it referred to that in there as a supernatural gift?
Well,
I wonder if that was sort of like a precursor to it, and it just kind of like slipped in there. You weren't really thinking about it at the time.
We get back to it. So basically, you register as undead for things that might detect it. Oh yeah, supernatural gift Hollow one.
Oh wow! Okay. Hey, look at that.
To be a Hollow one, you are ageless, so things that cause you to age don't work. Cling to life. When you make a death saving throw, you roll a 16 or higher, you regain 1 hit point. You retain your creature type, yet you register as undead to spells and other effects that detect the presence.
Can you be turned?
As an action, unsettle a creature you can see within 15 feet of you. The target has disadvantage on the next saving throw. If it next saving throw, it makes the next 15 minutes. Doesn't work on constructs, undead, and creatures immune to fear.
Can you be turned?
You don't get a lot for it. No. You just register as undead. You are not undead. You are still whatever.
Right. Oh, that's probably what that character in Critical Role was. The guy that was like their guide in the jungle when they were like all in the ocean. Remember, because you like registered as undead to Caduceus. That was probably what that guy was.
It's a fun thing.
Committee Costco.
So when we're talking about a one shot, playing things that are a little bit more powerful, it's not too big a deal. And I was an Echo Knight.
Okay.
We're gonna play in there. I might as well play
sure.
a thing.
Right on, man.
So the way I did it was my story was because we were I think 5th level, and we had adventured together. We took a break. Characters went off and did their own story, and we were getting back together for a new quest. Well, in this backstory, I wound up summoning my Echo. I died, and somehow the Echo lived on.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Kind of
So that was my character's story of why I was undead. You know, so it was definitely a lot of fun.
Sure.
To go down there, and technically that is beyond death.
yeah, that's a really fun concept. And see, that's like that's the beauty of these games and all that stuff. It's like, you know, we talked about this. We were talking about blindness and a lot of things where it's like, look, if you're not looking for any kind of like mechanical benefit to something, it's just like, who cares, you know? Like people be like, well, can you do that? And it's like, yeah, why not? I mean, it's just a storytelling thing. It's like, same thing like in our Those Bastards game. It's like, growing up at, like in the elemental plane of fire. It's just like, well, it's this inhospitable place. It's like, well, so what? It's not like it doesn't give me any advantage or anything like that. And hey, that's straight up off of those little tables in the Xanathar's Guide. This is your life, man. So it's rules is written.
When you can make these kind of modifications, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I'm all for those little tweaks. I'm all for let's go ahead and do something different, because when you've been gaming for decades, how many times can you tell the same story? How many times do you want to fight? Oh look, it's a horde of kobolds. Oh my God, I'm afraid of this swarm of spiders. So you want to do things you want to think outside the box. So I am constantly making minor changes.
And it's funny, speaking of how you do, you want to play with the new mechanical stuff, but yeah, that's fun, and usually most of that stuff comes into play, like, in combat and stuff, which is a lot of fun. But yeah, like, to your point, it's also, it's like, it's fun to balance that like, action-packed stuff with just, like, what does it mean to be, like, to consider, like, I'm playing a guy that's, like, an echo of a timeline that might not have existed, except the real person died and I'm still here. It's just like, so it's like between fights you can just kind of like put yourself in that mindset where it's like, wow, like what would they think about the world? So that's kind of fun to balance in these games.
When you look at that, it's like, all right, well, somehow the Echo has lived on, and the Echo technically gets to summon an Echo, because I've gained all the powers that the other character that the character had, and then more, because I don't die as easily. I get up much easier. I'm a little bit scarier, so like I change the personality type. So like I would love to have played the game up to that point and had that happen, and be like, okay, now you got a personality shift. As it was a one-shot and there was no actual pre-game, there was not a whole lot of let's highlight that this character's personality is different, because it doesn't make sense. Without the pre-story, nobody really cares. But when I write a backstory, I write a backstory. I'm going to do things that, that make sense when I'm looking at that.
Yeah. And you can always pull that character out in the future for another game, and it's like, well, you kind of know what their personality and their perspective a bit, so it'd be fun to develop that. There's a couple of questions. I was gonna say there's some good conversation starters in there. Go ahead.
So Nick says, outside of Ghostwalk, when a character dies, do you offer a way to come back with some sort of penalty, like a permanent injury, or just have them roll up a new character, or some mix?
I've done all of those things, and I've enjoyed all of them. The first thing that comes to mind was my longtime Spelljammer campaign, where the Warlock started to grow like afraid of their patron, and they thought like, well, if I change who I am, they won't be able to see me. So he reincarnated, and he was always looking for like ways to polymorph and stuff, and eventually he got disintegrated in a fight, and there was like his patron was sort of like had agents attacking where they were and stuff, and he like sort of went against them, and so they were like extra ticked at him, right? So they went after him, and they went on a long, complicated, like challenging test of his skills and moral fiber and all that stuff, and got a new patron, and we did that between sessions, like of that whole circumstance, and the other players didn't know that, so he actually came back as with a new patron, like at a crucial moment, because it's like it was hard as hell, man, and he was like down, it was touch and go and stuff, but he did it. And I was like, that's cool. So we switched patrons, and he had like a new one, different powers and stuff switched out. So that was pretty exciting. But yeah, I'm actually a fan of, like, if characters die. Not all the time. I mean, depending on circumstances. I shouldn't say I'm a fan. I'm okay with, like, different leveled characters in a group for a lot of reasons. It's like, well, it's a storytelling thing. It might be fun. They'll probably advance quicker, even if you're using milestones or whatever. You're like, well, a milestone for this guy is much lower than it is for their companions. But it might be fun. Like to your point about earlier, like coming in and like picking up the story of another character. Maybe it is some young person that was inspired by that character that died, and they just want to prove themselves. So I think that could be fun and interesting and challenging in a different way for all the players, the weaker one and the higher level ones.
So I've played in games where the character levels are different for different players based on the number of sessions attended and when you started. I don't tend to do that anymore these days. It's regardless of what the level is, regardless of how many sessions you attended, this is what this session is. Make sure your character's leveled to that. You can explain what you did or how you acquired the levels, if you care.
I should say I don't prefer that. I'm just saying, like, I could see a place for it. So, sorry.
For me, the unbalancing factor is, basically the party is going to divide the loot however they see fit. And, the previously gained loot, if I say, you're going to get, one rare and one uncommon for this thing, and a new player joins the game, I'm going to give them the one rare and the one uncommon, but anything else that had been gained over the course of the game, the other players are probably going to be more powerful, and it's up to them to decide whether, anything they've got or get later gets divvied up to you. And that's the way I tend to finagle things.
Hey, in that Cloakmaster cycle of novels from Spelljammer, it was just a 0-level farmer ended up saving the universe, man, because he had that artifact magical cloak. So you never know.
But to actually weigh in for myself on Nick's question, generally, if a player character in my game really likes their character and they somehow die, and the party is not quite ready for being able to bring them back, then it becomes a question of, well, is it possible? Is it feasible? Is the party willing to go on to do this? And if there is no money, if there is no real way to do it, all right, well, maybe sometime in the future, but for the most part, I don't tend to do permanent injuries. There isn't really a whole lot in the way of a mechanic system for 5th edition for a permanent injury. Everything can kind of get fixed by a long rest or the right healing spell. Okay,
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. On that point, yeah, I didn't pick up on that when I was talking, but yeah, I'm with you on that. It's like, man, I'd rather not track all that kind of stuff. It's like they're fantasy superheroes in D&D anyway. Like
right.
This edition.
In earlier editions, there were definite ways to record that kind of stuff and deal with it. Nowadays, the closest thing to deal with that permanent injury are levels of exhaustion, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And they are the closest things to it. So, like, when hey, I'm going to do this. All right, great. Well, if you want to have these moments where you've got a monster or a bad guy that's supposed to hit hard, well, then go ahead and play around with exhaustion. People are going to get scared real quick. It only takes 6 of them, and you're out the door. And it is something that I am playing with, in concept, at least in my headspace. I've got some ideas of things that I want to do at some point in time in the future, and the exhaustion mechanic is the perfect way to do it. So that fits on that. You know,
One thing that I was thinking of, and this kind of goes to Brian Smith's first comment there about it says, "Oh, we're talking Beyond the Veil." Um, we had talked about like Vent from those bastards games, or just other. We talk about it all the time of like when people are like, how do you do a plain air game? It's like just play there. It doesn't. I mean, just set your story there. How do you get there, right? So like, today I was reposted an article about like how you can use how you can curate the playable races for a campaign to sort of like aid in the world building, right? And like one of the things on there was like, what about like a campaign that just takes place in the Shadowfell, right? And that's sort of like the undeady, slice of the D&D multiverse, I would say. Not really. I mean, the negative energy planes, is that even a thing anymore? I think it is, but those places are just like, if you go there, you're going to be instantly destroyed. Like, there's no, you know what I mean? It's just like, and the Radiant, or the Cosmic ones. Anyways, so, that I think that would be interesting too, because it's like people live there. I mean, there's like settlements and stuff in the Shadowfell. And so, that would be an interesting thing too. I mean, what if you're just playing like people that have died and are there? And you could just use like, you don't have to have any real special mechanics. You could just play warlocks and wizards and rogues and maybe, thematically they might be dour people, right? Right, a lot of phantoms and necromancers and stuff.
The concept of a game is only limited by your imagination.
Mm-hmm.
You could absolutely play a game that starts off with how did you die?
Yeah.
I mean, Dave ran a game, and it might be one that we put up on the channel. It might not, but it was basically the gateway to Valhalla kind of scenario.
Oh yeah. He's talked about that before. Yeah.
And he introed with every player character said how they died, and then they went on from there and played the game. So you absolutely can take it however you want to go. I think it's always great to have that session zero. Have a conversation with how things are going to go. But if you're all dead and you've got spiritual items and you can adventure just like everything else, but what happens when your party is summoned? You're brought from your adventure or whatever you're doing by this evil necromancer, and you're forced to fight this thing, and you're pulled back. How do you handle that kind of thing?
I would take a lot of inspiration from the White Wolf. I don't know who publishes it anymore, but the Wraith game, and a big part of that, you're playing Wraiths in the afterlife and stuff. But a big part of the mechanics of that were like your fetters, I think they were called, which was like your ties to the living world, and that might be interesting. Like you said, in a session zero, it's like, well, if everybody had like, well, what was important to you in life, and it's like maybe you want to find ways to like look in on those people, and that's your motivation to like adventure in this bleak afterlife world, or like even just back to like, why didn't I just go on? Like, why am I here? Like, why? There must be some reason. So what else are you supposed to do when you just wake up in the Shadowfell, right?
Absolutely. So you could have a lot of fun, with
Margar would probably relish that place. With like, hey, this is this is my perspective anyway. I don't find any joy anywhere. Be a vacation.
Yeah, you could definitely go in that direction. You could find these more, dour and sour races, and be like, all right, well, what's the difference? We do have another question. Thoughts on an undying persona, a la Dread Pirate Roberts from Princess Bride? So I've got a changeling in my group looking to have a changeling give him an epic persona like that.
That's an awesome idea.
You could definitely go in the direction of, okay, well, what if you've got this this character who is, for all intents and purposes, looks human, but always trains someone else to take up the mantle, whether you're talking about a dread pirate or a dread bandit, or maybe the old hero is looking to pass on the mantle, and someone else is going to step into his stead. Maybe like a Robin Hood type scenario where the legend has it that this person is always there or will always arise. You know, almost a superhero-esque quality. You know, so whether you're looking to have a ranger or a fighter or a rogue, you know, someone who's willing to, you know, step into the shoes of this hero, you know, right in the time of need. You know, those kind of things, you know, are what make D&D shine.
I mean, changelings are really fascinating if you think about like a people that, you know, to them the changing shape, they're kind of like scrolls, right, or whatever, where it's like they could just be everywhere, anywhere. You know, they're just trying to live their lives. I mean, if it's a whole, you know, species of beings, right? I mean, think about all those like those classic, you know, westerns or samurai movies too, where they're like, you know, they're defending a town and they get everybody to like, you know, look dress up like even the Three Amigos, that comedy movie, you know, like they get it, like changelings could do that kind of stuff and like really perpetuate those myths and legends and like, you know, that kind of made me think as you were talking on that question, like, are there personas that sort of like changeling culture sort of like keeps to themselves too, where like, you know, everybody knows like that, like those kind of legendary things, like if you're in trouble you can always like become this person, or you know, perpetuate those stories, or like, you know, I mean there could be a vast amount of lore there that you could develop for your world or your setting or whatever, you know, with that sort of thing. I mean that's a deeply powerful like power, right? Just I anybody at a whim.
I look at it as the other way. You know, when you go into, you know, a town, settlement, city, what have you, how many of the vast humans that are there are a changeling who, by day, I'm a shopkeep and I enjoy playing Bob and what have you, but
do they switch off? Like, you know, like changeling kids, like, hey, I don't want to go to school. Yeah, I'll go. You know, I'll just pretend to be you.
I mean,
there's an old Richard Pryor movie, I think it's called Moving, where he had two twin kids, right? And like they moved to a new city, and the first day of school, like only one of them went, and they're like, "Oh, where's your brother? Whatever the other kid's name was." And he's like, "Oh, they always mix that up. That's just my middle name." So they would just switch off, like, you know, so only one of them had to go to school, and it's like, you know, changeling could do all that. Maybe somebody else like, "Oh, can I be Bob today?" Like, you know. Or like, I don't want to do that today. There's a delivery. I don't want to have to do it.
So, I mean, you know, there are so many things that you could do with changelings and have fun with it. You know, it's actually something that there's always lots of thoughts percolating in my head, but you know, that's another one that's like, all right, really don't do a lot with them. You know, a lot of times I put things out as this thing is going to be nice to the players. And most of the time when they're nice, they're just nice. But realistically, that's not the way the world works. There needs to be more things that are, you know, not all that they seem. In the Gryffindor game, you know, the Curse of Narcissus, like people kept waiting for the ball to drop, and Anna Lasselar, you know, like they thought he was going to be a villain, that he was going to be, you know, somehow attributed, but it's like, no, he was just a good guy throughout the whole thing, and Dave befriended him, spent all of this work, and sometimes you need to have that trustworthy ally that, you know, that the party can rely on. By the end, like, the party was so much more powerful than he was. Like, he was good for knowledge and, you know, good for, you know, magical rituals, but Dave's character dwarfed him in, you know, actual magical power. You know, because they were 20th level by the time the game was over. So of course, you know, I never had a full stat block. It was just, well, whatever the story needed at that moment. But you know,
I know it's funny how often people like and us too. You know, it's like we always want to know, like, oh, well, I say stat block for like this NPC or whatever. It's like most of the time I don't really, you know, they just do whatever I need them to do. I don't, you know. In my own games, like it's funny when we're doing, you know, developing our products and stuff. Well, of course, that stuff has to be all technical and like the hit points have to line up. But it's like, who cares? Like, people in my home game don't care about that.
The number of encounters that I have run in my home games where there are no stat blocks. Like, I just have, okay, you know, here's the things, and I'll draw, you know, monster number 1 through 7, and I'll draw lines across. The boss, I'll put a line in the, and the damage. Yeah, I'm aware of what what things are. But I'll do things. I'm like, oh yeah, of course this happens here, and of course that happens here, and oh, make a saving throw. Okay, what's gonna work? Okay, I think that number works. And I have the number. I have a strong enough grasp of the system that I feel comfortable doing that. And I could go ahead and make that stat block off of the numbers that happened during that encounter if I wanted. Or, I just kind of move on, whatever I need for that encounter to, set the scene, I do it.
Mm-hmm. Hey, speaking of, hey, whose month is it for the one shot? Me?
Oh, no, it's me.
Oh, okay. I was like, do I have to do that? Didn't you just do one?
No, I haven't.
Oh, Dave missed doing his. That's what
Dave was last month.
Yeah, but he missed the date.
My game, I believe, is the 28th.
Okay. Suddenly a panic attack. Am I trying to run a game in like a week?
My game is the 28th. I've got two of a minimum of 4 players. I started at 5th level, but I still haven't quite figured out what I'm running yet.
Boy, I keep almost like just inadvertently like blurting out stuff that I learned during that press briefing today for D&D Live. It's like, no, I can't. It's embargoed. So. It's like now it's in the forefront of my mind.
Well, let's keep a lid on that. Once we're allowed to.
Yeah. But it was fun.
For those viewers out there, if you got any questions, feel free to put at Nerdarchy or question in front of your stuff. We got roughly a little over 20 minutes left.
I will say they do have some cool stuff planned. I mean, that's not a secret. I mean, they're doing it's D&D Live, but of course it's virtual and stuff. But it's to raise money for Red Nose Day, which is to help end child poverty around the world. So they have some pretty cool stuff. I don't know if you knew, so there's an interactive Adventures League thing. And I think if you donate $10 to Red Nose Day, you get like a T-shirt or and like a special DM's Guild adventure. But you can also they made sort of like this interactive feature to some of their live games, like the one with Mark Muir. I think there's details over on the Wizards site. You can just look it up. But I thought that was kind of neat.
Yeah, I mean, we should definitely, share that out there.
Mm-hmm.
Get some extra, eyes on that, of course.
Yeah. I don't see a lot of. I'm curious. Did you get the chance to look at that Cortex game? By any chance?
I haven't.
I consider it a record that we went this long, kind of focused on the topic, so I'm going to veer off now. Sorry about it.
I honestly, I meant to look at it this weekend, and I have, basically Sunday, Monday of the week before, the players in my home game, we knew that we had a session coming up Saturday, and New Jersey was opening up, to allow for people to get together, and the conversation. It's a 5-player, 5-piece season made. So 6 people, that would definitely fall within the spectrum of allowances. So the players began discussing. And part of me is eager to see, my friends again and, get back to more normal. But part of me is absolutely terrified of, not only gathering when some people are, necessary workers interacting with a lot of people on a regular basis, and then if Dave were here, anything that he would get would go back to my sister, who is immunocompromised. So I wanted everyone's thoughts and feelings on it. So it took a while for everybody to kind of weigh in, and we decided no, at least this month we're gonna still stay streaming. But it took days to get this answer. So I had started cleaning, my.
Wait, what was the conflict? Like people, whether they wanted to game online?
Actually game in person versus online.
Oh. I see. I'm so used to playing online, even with my friends and stuff anymore. It's like I totally yes, a home game is the awesome. I prefer that, but it doesn't bother me just because it's like I've just been doing that for years. I've played much more, even with my own friends, because everybody moved away and all that.
Right, right.
So, but so it wouldn't really. So did you decide to even continue gaming? You guys?
Well, no, we're the game continued.
Oh! I thought it was like in person, or everybody was like,
No,
I'm
no,
out.
no, no, no.
Ah, okay.
We've now run 3 sessions. We did session 0 in person, and we discussed what things were going to be. And then by the time Corona hit, we hadn't run session 1 yet.
Right,
so session 2 and 3 have all been online.
Yeah.
But session 3 was Saturday night.
Is this that Expanse game?
No. This is the as I'm calling it, repercussions.
Oh, your follow-up campaign. Okay, gotcha.
So I started panicking because I had to clear off, to clear off the gaming table. And those who know me, I am quite the clutter bug, and I've been trying to, while people aren't coming, I've been trying to reorganize and declutter, get things gone, purge, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And I was nowhere near done. I was not expecting people to be like, "Hey, we're gonna be there in 6 days," and I'm like, ah. So I had started the process of cleaning, but I hadn't done anywhere near as much as I wanted. And then all of a sudden, people decided, no, we're definitely gonna do another month of online. I'm like, great, I can move on to the next thing. So now it's even worse than it would have.
Okay, I got you.
But I've got hordes and hordes of stuff that went to the curb. That's getting picked up tomorrow.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
Just from your basement?
Yep.
So it's like a lot. I've only it wasn't terrible when I was there, but I mean, it wasn't like just stuff that you got rid of that you don't want, or like actual junk.
Actual junk. Like I said, I'm a clutter bug. I definitely have way too much stuff for the size of my house. And there are alcoves and there are places where things have been hidden and just stacked and stacked and stacked. I'm like, it needs to go. And I've been trying to get rid of stuff, and now that we're getting closer and closer to people being able to see each other in person, I'm like, all right, I've got to make more progress now. So I've been.
It is the exact opposite for me. I've lived in like just 1-bedroom apartments for so long, and I have like a 3-bedroom house with like a dining room and stuff. And it's just like I got stuff, but it's large. Like I don't have any knickknacks and everything because I've moved so many times. It's just like every time you move, it's like, man, I don't need this. Like, man, I don't need that. So it's like. Well, it's the opposite of clutter. It's just me here.
Sadly, I am and always have been a thing person. I actually had something that I've been holding on to for no reason whatsoever since 1996.
Okay.
It was from high school. That's the year I graduated. And it was like, why on earth do I still have this? And it took me like weeks of sitting there saying, I'm going to get rid of this, to get it put into the trash can. And then there was like a pang, in my heart, in my brain, when my daughter, who was taking out the trash, is like, Daddy, are you sure you want to get rid of this? And I'm like, yes, and it needs to go. Like,
is there a tear? Were you misty?
It wasn't a tear, but like, my need to hold on to things, it's hardwired. And I'm trying to push, and it's effort, man.
Don't let the stuff you own you, man.
And hey, it's out at the curb. I got rid of it. The trash man will come tomorrow and it will be gone. And
I'm just embarking on my adventure of acquiring clutter, so I got many years to go.
I am a master.
My clutter's right here with all this gaming stuff.
I am a master, so you don't necessarily want to learn from me. But yeah. So you brought up Cortex, so obviously you want to chat about that
sure.
to some degree.
Yeah, I'm just really excited about it, just because learning new rules is not easy for me for a game usually. So like that's a big hurdle. What's that?
I said I'm right there with you.
It's a big hurdle just because like if it's just too much, like when you start reading it, like I don't want to, like some things are just like this is too like dense, like or where the text is really crunchy, or it's like character creation is like 80 pages long. Okay, whatever. So I went into it thinking like I want to learn these rules and understand them, and man, it is super clear and concise and really easy to pick up and flexible, and I think you guys are really gonna like it. So yeah. So I don't know. You have like the Firefly game and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because it says it's compatible with that, so I believe it is basically just like a really cleaned up and refined. Oh yeah, the Serenity game. Sorry, refined version of that system. But it really has the benefit of like approaching the putting this game together from like, well, with all the interaction and communication and feedback that people share with like what they like about games, it's like it really kind of hits on all those notes, and it's pretty easy. It's a dice pool system where you just keep the two highest basically of your dice pool, and it's sort of got that. I always get Fate and Cypher System mixed up, which is the one where when you're making your character, you just kind of like have like an adjective and a noun or whatever, where it's just like your concept. So yeah, so it's kind of like that, where character creation is like your concept, and then it's like, well, when you do stuff, if your character concept would make that thing easier for you, then you have some sort of advantage, and if it doesn't, then you just a straight roll or whatever. And then of course there's a bunch of modifiers to that, like whatever. So it's pretty simple like that. It's really just straightforward, and there's a lot, like everything's an opposed roll. So like if you are trying to like whatever jump over a gap, it's like, well, then the GM rolls a dice pool, and then you just basically have to beat that number. So pretty simple, but yeah, I'm looking for it, and it's just a really clean and well put together book and rule system. So and the premise is it's like a generic system in the sense of like it doesn't even have like stat names like strength and intelligence. It's like, well, you use it to sort of make the game you want to play. So like before we were on here, we were talking about like Dave wanted to talk about making a galactic wrestling game. So it's like you might have a game where like in ring, mic skills, like technical wrestling, and like brute strength or something are like the traits, right? And it's like, well, I might have like I put my high die in this one or whatever. So it's pretty cool like that, pretty innovative. I like it. If I was gonna make a game with that, I think I'd make a Mega Man game, because I like that IP, and there's a lot to draw from with all the different powers that you get from getting the things.
I'm very fond of Mega Man. I was not very good at it, but I definitely enjoyed playing the many Mega Man games. And I even watched the corny TV show that allowed them to acquire the powers from the other guys.
There was a Game Boy Advance Mega Man series called Battle Network, which actually is my favorite. So you play a kid, which I like that in RPGs, and that like Tales from the Loop and that sort of thing, kids on bikes. Mm-hmm. And you have like basically a cell phone, but this was an old game, so it wasn't that advanced. But so there's like a net world, and Mega Man is like your avatar there. So it's like as a kid you have adventures and do stuff, but it's not really like life threatening and stuff because you're a kid, so I'm not gonna get like killed or whatever. And then you can go in the net world as Mega Man and battle and all that kind of stuff. So I like that. I think that would be a cool property to sort of. I'm itching to sort of master Cortex, and like, I got Mega Man Battle Network RPG. That's my goal.
Depends. Do we have a connection at Capcom?
Yeah. That's probably what more likely happens. Like they'll just partner with them, and Capcom will just give them like $8 gajillion to do it. But whatever, I'll play it. Hey, actually a question came up from Michael Melbourne. Do the different gods in D&D treat death in different ways? Like canon? Yes, absolutely. There's like Kelemvor is the god of a god of death in like the Forgotten Realms, but like he's like the kind god where it's like, well, he's just shepherding you to the afterlife, and then there's like god like Cyric, who's like they actively want people to die, or Orcus and stuff, or he's sort of a death god, right? And it's like his goal is to obliterate all life and resurrect his undead hordes under his commands. So yeah, absolutely.
So and whether you want to do D&D canon or whether you want to have things in your own brew, you can definitely look at that kind of stuff as a as an example is what you want to do, what you could do or would do. I'm certain that there are gods where like death is the next great adventure, so you die and it's no big deal. um, when you look, and you brought up Lord of the Rings earlier, even each of the races there looked at death differently. The
Yeah.
elves in Lord of the Rings, they look at death as this kind of reverent but mysterious thing, because like it's alien to them. Those when you live for
Yeah.
thousands of years, like death is like, holy crap, that life just ended. What do I do here?
And then they just go to the Undying Lands where they continue to live forever. I guess, right?
You've got the dwarves who have no problems, seeking it out, because it's about live in the moment and what have you, and then when you look at the fact that Aragorn isn't even human, he's totally drawing a blank on what exactly
A Numenorian man,
something along those lines.
a man of Numenor, some ranger from the north.
It's different. So like you can go even that far with your world. Is how does your character, how does your race, how does your religion view death? And
Oh yeah,
all of them could turn into an absolute unique viewpoint. And it's
and that's where. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
and it's good to know where that leads you, so that when you kill something, or when a party member dies, that you're having the correct reaction.
Yeah, and that's a great way. That's a great piece of DM advice. Is like for those things in your setting or whatever, especially like if you're a new DM and you want to try like homebrewing your own setting. I know it seems really daunting. Like things like that. We'll just ask the players like their character if it's pertinent, right? Like if somebody makes a cleric, ask them like, well, what is your god like? Is it a god of your people, or your something else or stuff? So they're contributing to that world building, and it's the same way with those sorts of things. It's like no DM except like maybe Matt Mercer can like develop an entire world where it's like, I mean, dude knows his shit. Like, he is the example of like knowing your setting. Like, if they go down the street, he has a shop. I'm sure it's like he has some lists of random names and stuff, but you know what I mean. Where like the gods are fleshed out. People's cultural traditions about those gods have some notes about it at least, right? So it's like, yeah, you can get down in the to the minute details and do that stuff, but you can also like incorporate your players like that too, because it's like if you have no strong feeling about like how dwarven death gods are, right? And somebody wants to play like a dwarf who is a cleric, maybe they have a grave domain, right? Well, there's your opportunity. It's like, you tell me, like, what does that mean to you? Like, it could just be that they just like the power combination or whatever too.
As
Maybe they get something.
As a DM, I fully endorse handing over homework to your players.
Yeah. It's fun as a player too. I mean, how cool is that? I love when DM's like, wow, like something might come up with, you're actually gonna like fold it into the setting. That's awesome.
So like Dave in the game Saturday night, the players had 4 days to go do what they wanted, because they were gonna wait for an item to be finished being made. Okay, great, no big deal. So he's like, all right, I went and made contacts within the city. He's got an urchin background. He knows how to work the people. I'm like, great. I rolled a d6. I'm like, you made 3 contacts. You tell me who they are. And that's your homework. Tell me who they are, what race, what have you. And he took 10 minutes, and like he was already messaging me that that night of, here's the contacts, here's what they do. I'm like, all right, great. I didn't need to create these things. These were put together. I can now add this to my, campaign document, put that under this setting. These are Dave's contracts. I didn't have to do the work.
Yeah, I mean, how much more rewarding or easy can it get for the DM when players are just like, here's the thing that will make your game cool for me? Like, okay, I'll just do that.
Yes.
Then. You're right. Like, thanks. Right. Hey, we're nearing the end, but we did have another question come in from Brian Smith. They've got a player that died in a war and has been reconstituted, which I guess means revived or whatever. Oh, maybe. Okay, and now there's a Storm Cleric. Any interesting ways to reveal their former life? Players leaving it to them to wide open to come up with. I mean,
okay, so I'm guessing that the spirit has come into a new body.
Right, or maybe it's just a backstory, like, and then maybe they're just flavoring it. Like, that's how I took it too. Like, even if you're like, maybe just their background was like, I died and came back to life, or whatever. Either way.
So, I mean, you can. The fun thing to do is, especially if it's the same timeline, interact with players or with characters, with NPCs or PCs that knew that original character. To see
it's a Warforged, by the way, so that might change.
Well, no, so all right, so it's fine. All right, so like a family member, how is that? How is that Warforged going to react when they see their former family? You're in an emotionless robot body or pseudo emotionless, and here's someone that's flesh and blood that you remember. What if you come upon an item that meant something to your former life? How do you react? If you tie things in on occasion, you don't want to shove it down their throat, but when you have these memories that you only kind of vaguely attach to, how are you going to react? What are you going to do? Those are the moments I would look for.
Yeah, and for being a cleric specifically, I mean, again, like I don't know what people's degree of investment in picking a class is, but it's like, whether you're just like, well, I like the powers that they have or whatever. But I mean, being a cleric suggests that like you are involved with divine stuff, right? Like whether you chose to be that or whatever. So I mean, ways to reveal their former life, like I mean, in storms, in things they hear in the thunder. Maybe they hear portents, or like, are they a storm player because they're devout towards this thing, or is it just like an unknown thing? I mean, their god could try to be like, guiding them towards finding out what about their former life by also being faithful to them and sort of like idealizing that faith in the world.
Is this character back to life as a forged because they actually worship the storm god? Is it a punishment because they wronged the storm god? What is the former association between character and the storm god? Is the body that you're in requiring the lightning from the storm, and without it that body doesn't work? Like, there's so many different avenues to look at with that aspect. I'm certain you guys are tired of hearing this, but I love clerics, so like I really get into all of the divine things that you can when you play with it. So when you look at this particular example, you need to explore all of those relationships, and I would talk to that character and say, what is that character looking to get out of that particular dynamic, that relationship, and then seed from there. Does the character know as much as the player knows? Do you want certain things to come out? Does that former character have something that needs to be done? And when you look at that specific example, okay, great, that needs to be done at some point in time, even if it's some stupid mission of tell his former wife that he loved him and he is sorry about this wrongdoing that he did, or the family's land deed is actually in this location and it's going to solve all these family woes. Great, go make that happen many sessions down the road.
And to add on to that, one last thing I thought of was, as far as like interesting ways to reveal their former life, every now and again, just like throw in something that's unusual for that character, like some NPC notices them or like says they know them, or just the vaguest thing, right? Just the hint that like something special's going on with that character, right? And see what the player's reaction is, because players will come up with all kinds of crazy things. So like, oh, maybe it meant this, maybe it meant that, and just listen to what they say. They'll help you along the way.
Give the Warforged a mannerism that is not robotic. Yeah. And have that original character have had that. That was fairly unique. And when you come upon somebody that's like, oh my god, I knew somebody who used to do that. I've never seen anyone else. So yeah. That could be a cool, interesting time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think we answered all the questions and we addressed all the things that need addressing. So I guess we'll sort of wrap it up here. Nerd Arcade will be back tomorrow at noon with some creative guest in the hot seat. And we'll be back next Monday again, and some configuration of the three of us.
Don't forget, tomorrow night, those bastards!
Oh, yeah, how could I forget? Yeah, right here, we're going to have our second session of our previously private team game, Those Bastards, here on Nerdaki Live, so come back and check that out at 8 p.m. Eastern. And until then, until next time,
stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.